You think you know about heroes, right? The guys in the history books, chests full of medals, faces carved in granite? Well, forget all that. This ain't your grandpappy's war story. We're about to dive headfirst into the trenches of American history, unearthing the grittiest, most unbelievable tales of courage and defiance you've ever heard. We're talking about the underdogs, the misfits, the folks who looked danger in the eye and said, "Not today." From battlefields soaked in blood to acts of bravery that'll make your jaw drop, these are the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to be one wild ride. Get ready to be amazed by some of the most unusual and heroic figures in U.S. military history. These are the stories of 10 war heroes who defied the odds and left their mark in the most unexpected ways. Now, most folks associate war heroes with guns blazing, grenades flying, the whole 9 yards. But Desmond Doss? He was cut from a different cloth. This man, a devout Seventh-day Adventist, he believed in saving lives, not taking them. Imagine that. Signing up for the army, the ultimate test of your mettle, and refusing to even touch a rifle. That's guts right there. Doss. He became a combat medic, a guardian angel in the Hellfighter of World War II. He believed his duty was to God, to his country, and to his fellow soldiers, and he lived by that code every single day. Little did anyone know this quiet kid from Virginia was about to become a legend, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. The Battle of Okinawa, 1945. Imagine the scene, bullets whizzing past your head, explosions rocking the ground beneath your feet, the air thick with smoke and the stench of death. Now picture Doss, unarmed and unafraid, tending to wounded soldiers while the world went mad around him. He didn't care if you were American or Japanese, friend or foe. If you were hurt, Doss was there, patching you up, dragging you to safety. Under a hailstorm of enemy fire, he single-handedly lowered 75 wounded soldiers down a treacherous cliff face one by one, all while dodging bullets and praying for a miracle. This wasn't some Hollywood action flick, folks. This was real life, and Doss, he lived it with more bravery and compassion in his little finger than most of us could muster in a lifetime. His actions that day earned him the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States, and you know what? He was the first conscientious objector to ever receive it. Talk about defying expectations. Desmond Doss, he proved that heroism comes in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to fight. Now, we've all heard stories about kids sneaking into movie theaters or fudging their age to get served at a bar, but imagine this, a 9-year-old kid, barely knee-high to a grasshopper, convincing the Union Army to let him fight in the Civil War. That's John Lincoln Clem for you. This little guy, he was determined to serve his country, even if it meant lying about his age and dodging cannon fire before he could even grow a proper mustache. They called him Johnny Shiloh, a nickname he earned after his drum was shot to pieces during that bloody battle. Now, you might think a kid that young would be relegated to playing music and running errands. But Johnny Clem? He had other plans. This wasn't just any drummer boy, folks. Clem, he carried himself with a seriousness and maturity that belied his tender years. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, to face the enemy head-on. In fact, during the chaos of the Battle of Chickamauga, he found himself face-to-face with a Confederate officer. This officer, probably thinking he was dealing with an easy target, demanded Clem's surrender. Now, imagine the scene. A towering Confederate soldier looking down at this pint-sized soldier expecting him to tremble and cower. But Clem? He wasn't having any of it. He raised his musket, took aim, and fired a shot that echoed through the battlefield. The officer went down, and Johnny Clem, the drummer boy of Shiloh, became a national hero. Newspapers across the Union hailed his bravery, his story becoming a symbol of youthful courage and unwavering patriotism. John Clem showed the world that age is just a number, and sometimes the smallest among us can rise to the greatest of occasions. You think you've got a tough job? Try being Cathay Williams. Born into slavery in Missouri, Cathay found herself freed after the Civil War. But freedom didn't exactly pave the way to easy street. Jobs were scarce, especially for a young African-American woman. So Cathay, she did what any of us would do with a mountain of grit and a whole lot of gumption. She got creative. She disguised herself as a man and joined the army as William Cathay. She served with the Buffalo Soldiers, facing dangers and hardships. Eventually she fell ill and her secret was discovered. Cathay was discharged without recognition or pension. She broke barriers, but society wasn't ready. You ever meet a guy who's just naturally tough? The kind of guy who could wrestle a bear with one hand and build a log cabin with the other? Well, Audie Murphy wasn't that guy. He was a scrawny kid from Texas, but don't let that fool you. Audie Murphy was one tough hombre. World War II was raging and every able-bodied man was signing up to fight. Audie wanted to do his part, but the Marines said, "Son, you're about as intimidating as a sack of potatoes." The Navy and the paratroopers weren't too keen on him either, but Audie was persistent. He had this fire in his belly, this need to prove himself. Finally, the Army gave him a shot. Little did they know, they'd just enlisted the deadliest soldier in American history. Now, I'm not glorifying violence here, but when you're staring down the barrel of a German machine gun, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. And Audie did it with a level of courage and grit that most folks can only dream of. The stories of Audie Murphy's bravery, they're the stuff of legend. In France, he found himself staring down a German tank. Now, most folks, they'd head for the hills, but not Audie. He hopped on top of that burning tank destroyer, grabbed the .50 caliber machine gun, and let him have it. He held off an entire German company for an hour, single-handedly. An hour! Can you imagine the guts that took? The Germans, they must have thought he was a ghost or something, the way he was mowing them down. And if that wasn't enough, Audie, he then leads a counterattack, while wounded mind you, and helps secure the victory. He was like a one-man army, taking on the entire German war machine with nothing but a rifle and a whole lot of heart. Audie earned every medal they could throw at him, including the Medal of Honor. But for Audie, it wasn't about the accolades. It was about duty, honor, and protecting the guys next to him. He was a reluctant hero, a quiet professional who just happened to be really, really good at his job. Now, we've all heard the stories of fearless frontiersmen, but what about the women? The women who braved the wilderness right alongside them? Well, folks, let me tell you about Nancy Hart, a woman who could out-hunt, out-shoot, and out-cuss any man foolish enough to underestimate her. Standing 6 feet tall with fiery red hair and a temper to match, Nancy wasn't your typical colonial housewife. She was tough as nails, resourceful, and fiercely protective of her family and her land. The Cherokee, they called her Wahachi, which means war woman. And believe me, they didn't give out that title lightly. See, the Revolutionary War, it wasn't just fought on battlefields. Out on the frontier, it was a messy, brutal affair, with neighbors turning against neighbors. And Nancy, she found herself right in the thick of it. Loyalists, they were crawling all over Georgia, trying to sway folks to the British side. But Nancy, she wasn't having any of it. She was a patriot through and through, and she wasn't afraid to stand up for what she believed in, even if it meant staring down the barrel of a musket. One story tells of a group of British soldiers, 6 of them, barging into Nancy's cabin, demanding she cook for them. Now, Nancy, she was known for her hospitality, but she had a strict no shirt, no shoes, no service policy, especially when it came to redcoats. She played it cool, pretending to agree while secretly stashing their muskets away. Then, with the grace of a seasoned bartender, she offered them some of her finest moonshine. Now, that moonshine, it was legendary, strong enough to knock the sense out of a mule, and it did the trick on those British soldiers. As they stumbled around, drunker than a skunk on payday, Nancy, she disarmed them one by one. Can you imagine the look on their faces when they realized they'd been outsmarted by a woman? She marched those soldiers outside at gunpoint and handed them over to the Patriot militia. Some folks, they might call her methods unconventional, but hey, when you're fighting for your freedom, sometimes you gotta get creative. Nancy Hart, she was a true American original, a woman who proved that courage and patriotism know no gender. You ever heard the term Harlem Hellfighters? They were the 369th Infantry Regiment, an all-black unit fighting for a country that didn't always fight for them. World War I was raging, and these guys were stuck with the worst jobs, treated like second-class citizens, even in the trenches. But Henry Johnson, now this was a man who didn't know the meaning of second class. Stationed out in the Argonne Forest, he and a fellow soldier were on guard duty. Middle of the night, pitch black, they hear the telltale sounds of German soldiers approaching. Not a good sound, let me tell you. Now Johnson and his buddy, they only had a few grenades and a whole lot of grit between them. They fought like demons, those grenades scattering the first wave of Germans, but more were coming, and they were running out of options fast. See, these weren't your average trench raiders. This was a full-on assault, and Johnson was about to show them what happens when you underestimate a Hellfighter. Johnson, he empties his rifle into the advancing Germans, but it jams, and now he's in a real pickle. Outnumbered, outgunned, most folks would have thrown in the towel. Not Henry Johnson. He grabs the only weapon he has left, a bolo knife. Imagine the scene. A hail of German gunfire, and this one man, standing his ground, bolo knife flashing in the moonlight. He takes a bullet to the arm, another grazes his head, but he keeps fighting, screaming defiance with every swing of that blade. 21 wounds. That's how many they counted on Johnson after the fight was over. 21 wounds, and he never gave an inch. He fought them off, single-handedly saved his comrade, and sent those Germans running for the hills. The French, they recognized a hero when they saw one. They awarded Johnson the Croix de Guerre, their highest military honor. Sadly, it took America a whole lot longer to do the same.
Sir, no, sir!
The Revolutionary War muskets blazing, drums pounding, and a young woman named Deborah Sampson stuck at home, yearning for a taste of the action. See, back then, women weren't exactly welcomed with open arms on the battlefield. But Deborah, she had other plans. She was a woman of action, strong-willed and resourceful. So she did what any self-respecting woman wanting to fight for her country would do. She disguised herself as a man, cut her hair short, bound her chest, and adopted the name Robert Shirtleff. Now, enlisting under a false name, that's pretty gutsy. But Deborah, or Robert, she didn't stop there. She joined the 4th Massachusetts Regiment, facing down, not just the British, but the constant fear of discovery. Think about it, sleeping in cramped quarters, marching for miles on end, all while hiding her true identity. It was a dangerous game, but Deborah, she was playing for keeps. And she wasn't just playing soldier, she was fighting. She saw combat, stood shoulder to shoulder with the men, proving her mettle under fire. One battle, a musket ball ripped through her leg. Now, most folks would be screaming for the medic, right? Not Deborah. She knew a doctor's examination would expose her secret. So, what does she do? She digs that musket ball out herself, with a penknife. Talk about grit. For 2 years she lived a double life. A soldier by day, a woman in hiding by night. It was an illness finally that revealed her true identity. But instead of facing punishment, her commanding officer, he was so impressed by her courage, he granted her an honorable discharge. Deborah Sampson, the woman who fought for freedom, twice over. Once against the British, and once against the limitations placed on her gender. Now that's a hero worth remembering. Imagine this. You're just a kid, barely a teenager, when you're thrown into a Nazi concentration camp, your family, ripped away from you, the world, a living nightmare. That was Tibor Rubin's reality. He survived the horrors of the Holocaust, but the experience left an indelible mark. When he finally made it to America, the land of the free, he swore an oath to spend his life repaying the debt he owed to the soldiers who liberated him. And how did he choose to do that? By enlisting in the U.S. Army. Now this wasn't just any enlistment. This was the middle of the Korean War. And Tibor, he wanted to be on the front lines fighting for the country that had given him a second chance. He was assigned to the 8th Cavalry Regiment, a unit known for its grit and determination. And Tibor, he fit right in. His moment of truth came during the Battle of Pusan Perimeter. The North Korean army, they were bearing down on his company's position. Wave after wave of enemy soldiers, determined to overrun their position. Tibor, he volunteered to stay behind, to hold off the enemy while his comrades retreated. Alone on that hilltop, with only a rifle and a mountain of ammunition, he fought like a man possessed. For 24 hours, he held that hill. 24 hours of non-stop fighting, repelling attack after attack. He ran out of grenades, he ran out of ammo, but he never ran out of fight. He was eventually captured, tortured as a prisoner of war, but never broke. And when he finally returned home, his heroism was met with silence. You see, prejudice reared its ugly head. Chapter 10. The 12-year-old Sailor. Calvin Graham wasn't trying to fool a bouncer, he was trying to fool Uncle Sam. At 12, he lied about his age to join the Navy during World War II. Assigned to the USS South Dakota, he faced intense battles. Calvin showed incredible bravery, earning a Purple Heart and Bronze Star. But when the Navy discovered his age, they stripped his honors. He fought for years to reclaim his medals, proving true courage. Chapter 11. The Bear Who Went to War. We've all heard the saying, that's unbear-leavable. But I'm here to tell you about a story where truth is truly stranger than fiction. This is the tale of Wojtek, a Syrian brown bear who went from orphaned cub to a full-fledged soldier. Found by Polish soldiers in Łódź, Wojtek grew up with them, sharing rations and even learning to salute. He carried supplies and ammunition, becoming a symbol of strength and courage. After the war, Wojtek lived in a Scottish zoo visited by his comrades, truly a heartwarming tale. Chapter 12. Echoes of Courage. Well, folks, we've climbed mountains of courage, navigated the depths of dedication, and unearthed some truly remarkable tales of the human spirit. From a young boy who lied about his age to serve his country, to a bear who became a brother in arms, these stories remind us that heroism doesn't come with an instruction manual. It's not confined to history books or reserved for the larger-than-life figures we see in movies. No, true grit, the kind that shines brightest when the odds are stacked against you, lives and breathes in the most unexpected places. It's the conscientious objector who becomes a battlefield medic, the teenager who stares down a tank, the woman who disguises herself to fight for freedom. It's the bear, for crying out loud, who carries artillery shells alongside his human comrades. These incredible stories remind us that heroism comes in many forms. From the youngest soldiers to the most unexpected allies, these war heroes have shown that bravery knows no bounds. Stay tuned for more amazing tales from history.